All right. We could all rise for the pledge, please. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. A moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces, our veterans, our first responders, those fighting the good fight in Ukraine, and those suffering from the military conflict in the Middle East. Thank you. So before we go to people that have signed up for public participation, I'd like to read the legal notice. Please take notice that pursuant to sections 405, 406 of the Town Charter, New Milford Town Council will hold a public hearing to hear public comment relating to the following: taking public input on the feasibility, needs, and possible uses of John Pettibone Community Center and the Catherine Lillis Building, also known as East Street School. This public hearing is to get public input on the feasibility, needs, and possible uses of John Pettibone Community Center and the Catherine Lillis Building, also known as East Street School. Said public hearing will be held in the E. Paul Martin Room at the New Milford Town Hall, 10 Main Street at 6 p.m. on March 25th. In the event that attendance exceeds lawful limits determined by the New Milford Fire Marshal, Town Council reserves the rights to recess and relocate the public hearing from the E. Paul Martin Room to another location in order to accommodate attendees. Dated at New Milford this 15th day of March 2024. So, with that being said, Sal, do we have anyone that would like to speak at public participation?
Yes, we do, Mr. Mayor. Ms. McAdory? McAdory, I'm sorry.
If you just state your name and address when you come up to the podium.
Yes, ma'am. I'll start with that. My name is McAdory Lipscomb Jr. I live at 37 Mary Acres Lane in New Milford. My wife and I moved here 10 years ago. Thank you, Mr. Mayor and members of the City Council, for the opportunity to speak. I am Vice President of the Board of Directors of Theater Works, here to talk about the Catherine Lillis East Street School, of which we currently share a parking lot. Our capital campaign is in limbo at the moment. While we've taken some time to begin to develop a 5-year plan, we can't do it without knowing what is going to be the parking situation. We want to stay in New Milford. We support the Catherine Lillis Building being refurbished as a regional center for the arts. East Street has priceless art in the murals, the unique stained glass that contributed to the uplifting spirits during the Great Depression. And along with other historical facilities like the Robert Sherman Town Hall, this town understands the value of historic buildings. The existing gym floor can be reconfigured into a shared performance venue with 200 or so seats, a full stage, and extensive backstage flexibility. Multiple dance studios, music performers, and other New Milford and area cultural events have gone to neighboring towns to find performance and creative space at a reasonable cost. Theater Works would like a role in staging additional works in what would be the building next door. Plus, a regional storage facility for costumes and sets would take advantage of the size of that building. Case in point, the Ridgefield Theater Barn, one of 4 major theater performances venues in Ridgefield, just completed a community wide $2.4 million upgrade campaign and added 3,300 square feet to a renovation of a small barn where they have approximately the same size seating that we do in Theater Works. The renovation is into a city building for which they rent for $1 a year. By the way, the state gave them $750,000 to do that program and complete that project along with broad community support. Clearly, our town can present as strong, if not stronger, arts advocacy in Hartford and surrounding areas. Theater Works' significance in helping to establish Lillis as a Northwest Center for the Arts Complex. We generate impact from our award-winning 112-seat community theater. Every year, Theater Works Kids delivers 4 programs for more than 100 students. In fact, Mr. Mayor, your Facebook post about Little Mermaid at New Milford High School, including a cast and crew of more than 10 Theater Works Kids alumni. In fact, and this is my shameless plug, Wait Until Dark kicks off this Thursday night with a sold-out performance. Please join us. We have seats. We're running through the 14th of the month of April. We have a director by the name of Kelly Solomon. Kelly is a 30-year teacher in the New Milford Public Schools, is an actor, director, producer, and a member of the League of Professional Theater Women in the Connecticut chapter. Starring Allie Bernhardt, a member of the New Milford Commission on the Arts, she has said she is grateful to be playing Susan Hendricks at Theater Works. Not only at this part meaningful to her, but so is this theater. In the last 2 years, Theater Works has sold just under 8,000 tickets, and American for Arts Research tells us that generated a little over $300,000 in projected additional revenue around the town. A little more than $38 per sold ticket of additional money is expended. In summary, New Milford is an arts-oriented town. We support, as Theater Works, the renovation of the Catherine Lillis building and the creation of a new Milford Center for the Arts for Northwestern Connecticut. And Theater Works would also like to know where our patrons will park before we begin our multi-million-dollar fundraising campaign. Thank you.
Thank you.
And you'll submit that?
I'm sorry?
You'll submit that for the record, your comments?
Be happy to. I have a copy at home. I'm happy to give you this one. Probably 2 or 3 words that added, but not many more. I was under the impression I could only talk for 3 minutes, so I made sure you knew what I needed to know.
Thank you. Sal?
Thank you.
What's the,
Welcome. If you are the meeting host,
Be right up over there.
anybody gonna call yet? They couldn't.
Mike, do you know what the pin is on that thing? For the number to pin in on?
Somebody's on. Who's on the phone? Hi, Chris.
Say 4,
4321 pound.
4, 3, 2, 1 pound.
Thank
Thanks.
you.
Tom?
Good evening. I suggest that before any decision is made,
Your name and address for the record.
Tom Kapsiak, 94 Long Mountain Road. I suggest that before any decision is made regarding either the East Street building or the JPC campus, that the town fund as soon as possible a systematic review of the town's and the school district's need for space in the future. I am not at all comfortable with the idea of the town making decisions based on relatively uninformed comments made by a handful of residents that might choose to speak at a public meeting, or even the small number that might show up for a vote at a town meeting. A professionally done facilities utilization assessment with a projection of future needs will provide both the town council and the community at large with a rigorous review, including a cost-benefit analysis of the options that should be considered. That is well beyond the resources of the individual community members. I look at the town as a small business serving a client base of about 30,000 people, with more likely in the future. I would expect the town to make use of the same tools that a business would use in defining what products or services to offer and what facilities and labor resources would be required to support its client base over the long term. We can't afford to have decisions about capital projects presented as a popularity contest given their impact on the long-term health of the town. I understand that the town government is intended to function as a representative democracy, but it also serves a much-needed management function to ensure that the town's prosperity and well-being of its citizens. The town can and should provide the citizens with the information needed to make informed, prudent decisions in the long-term interest of the community. We aim to be the greatest of all towns. Our decision-making process should be consistent with that goal. Thank you.
Thank you, John. Sal?
Rob Burkhart, 11 Whittlesey Avenue, President of the New Milford Trust for Historic Preservation. We're here tonight to gather for public input for the use of two schools, one from 1931, one from 1955. East Street School is the subject of my comments. The East Street School was built to be both inspiring and solid. This structure was built to last and also built to be the focal point of New Milford. Because of this, it has a level of detail. And as you may know, the building was built by the H.H. Taylor and Sons. The work was completed in 1931. And during the 1930s, the school acquired art from the Works Progress Administration Federal Art Project, a large stained glass window on American literature by Len Howard, and a mural by William Paddock called The Old School, plus other historic panels that are someplace roaming around that building. I haven't been in there in years. If you could visit the school, they can be seen in the north stairway and the second floor hallway. These historic pieces of art are a part of the building and must be preserved and protected. Adaptive reuse is the best approach for this older school building. By modernizing its interiors and preserving its exterior, this structure can find new life and serve the community in innovative ways. It can be transformed into a community center, cultural space, center for the arts, which is a very excellent idea, and other facilities. This New Deal school building continue to contribute to Milford's shared history and heritage. We've done adaptive reuse before, both public and privately in this town. 40 Main Street is now the senior center. The old post office is now the probate court building. Hungerford Hall is now the Union Savings Bank. Barton House is now Barton Commons. The Knapp House, Bank Building, and Boardman Store are part of a museum. Merwinsville Hotel is now Merwinsville Hotel Restoration. United Bank Building is now an event venue. New Milford Railroad Station is an office, Gallery 25, and a police substation. But wait, there's more around Connecticut. Woodrow Wilson High School, its apartments in Middletown, Connecticut. As a matter of fact, my brother, who was not with us for many, many years, was a graduate of the Woodrow Wilson, now it's apartments. Country Home School, Vernon Community Arts Center. Ansonia High School is the Crystal Theater. Old Litchfield County Jail, 4 luxury residential apartments, 2 financial advisors, several boutiques, and a restaurant. The appeal of historic school buildings goes far beyond the architectural aesthetics. The benefits of adaptive reuse of this historic school could include or should include it's located in a walkable, bikeable area. It's more sustainable than other buildings. Sturdy construction, even if it hasn't been updated for years and years. These old school structures were built to last. Often more affordable than new construction, significantly less expensive than demolishing and rebuilding. It has mixed-use potential. When it comes to adaptive reuse projects, historic school buildings shine. Their layout and infrastructure lend themselves well to mixed-use developments. Community connections or historic schools hold special places for those who are graduating there, if they're still in town now. But many thoughts are there. By repurposing them, developers can preserve community memories while breathing new life into the building. It's a way to honor the past while meeting present needs. Could be a community rallying point, and it could be possibly subsidized by federal and state tax credits under the Historic Restoration Fund if there's major reconstruction or construction.
We've got 30 seconds left.
Okay. grants from certified local government, and saving New Deal artwork. This one I got to get through is to point the whole thing. The East Street School is listed on the state and national register of historic places, and it's protected against unreasonable destruction under the Connecticut Protection Act, CEPA, Connecticut Environmental Policy Act, Section 22A, 1A, 4. The East Street School is located in the National Historic District, and that was done in 1986. In summary, this historic building offers a unique blend of art, charm, functionality, and community value, make it an ideal for reuse. I ask that we seriously consider adaptive reuse to save and protect New Milford's history, historic buildings, and culture for citizens of the past, present, and future. Reuse is the only limited to one's imagination and willingness to preserve. Thank you.
Thank you.
Did I make it?
Mr. Russo? Brian Russo?
The previous speakers have all spoken in favor
Sir,
of,
just your name and address for the record, please.
oh, I'm sorry, Frank Russo, 24 Standish Road. Previous speakers have all had very good things to say about keeping both buildings, and we do need that space. And the East Street School is a gem. It's just absolutely, if it went, it would be a tragedy for the town. But that's not my point. I mean, most people here are in favor of keeping both buildings. And my question is, there has been no committees formed to explore possibilities of financing, construction, rehabilitation of the buildings. And you have said, and is it Katie Francis at the last meeting said that we should have the townspeople make the decision. But how are the townspeople going to make the decision? Who's going to give them the information? All right? Is the mayor's office going to give them the information? Are they going to give them the information like they've advertised this meeting? Wasn't advertised very well. And that's the important thing. You can give the townspeople information and say, oh, it's going to cost $40 million and we can't do it. Or you could say, these two buildings are gems and we need them. Two opposite things. That's why I think you need independent committees to be able to give the townspeople that information so they can make the decision. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Robbins?
Hi, Hillary Ram, 154 Guernsey Lane. I think a lot of what I was going to say has already been said. I won't repeat it. I think that everybody's saying the same thing, which is these decisions are really important and really big for the town. They can't be made in isolation. We need more information and context to make good decisions. And ultimately, that information has to come from your office. Like what are the costs? What's the annual cost of these buildings? A lot of information that we've gotten, like quotes or estimates, I worry because it's from one architecture firm. And I wonder, like, there maybe should be a committee to look into the costs, because one opinion, when we don't really even know I'm speaking about the East Street building, we heard a number thrown out there, but we didn't really know what he was given, the specifics of what he was given to price out. So we need to be able to compare apples to apples and understand fully what it would cost for the purpose, that we want. So I think that mostly, if this is just hear from the public, an initial get information, let everybody just throw ideas against the wall, but then you're going to come back to us with real, true possibilities. And I think there are really three things, right? It's sell it, keep it and repurpose it, or have a public-private partnership. Those are sort of the three avenues. So we just need a fleshed out, real, true vision for each of those buckets and for each of those buildings in the context of everything else going around in the town. Like, are we moving the ball fields? Are we doing the riverfront project? All of these things are really important to understand what we need. Like Tom was saying, a full needs assessment. You know, are all of our agencies housed at the Pettibone building? Are they all happy there? Is it working for them there? Would it be better if they were at East Street, closer to town? I mean, all of these things play into it. So I think that we need more information. I love this idea of hearing from people, and I've loved hearing all of these ideas, but I think that people are eager to hear some real facts about the costs, the options in a more concrete presentation, and understand what the specifics of those costs that you're presenting are, so what we would get. And let's see, as for, I think I spoke to the Lills building last time when we had the last meeting, so this is more towards Pettibone. I worried with the recent lawsuit pending, you know, I want to know about environmental studies down there. That is, you know, the soils and the water. So those are important questions to get answers to before we, you know, go anywhere further talking about Pettibone. But it has been such a good community center down there. All through COVID, we know what it did. We know what it can do for us. So again, I'm sort of saying keep both these buildings until we know what we need in this town, and we need that information. So everybody's hungry for more plans, more data. But thank you for this opportunity to hear from everybody and express. Thank you.
Thank you.
Barbara?
Barbara Wolf, 3 Birch Road. I'm here to speak on behalf of Pettibone Community Center. It's the hardest working building that New Milford owns. In addition to the convenient location, housing several valuable social services, meeting rooms with room for more, it was invaluable during COVID days, first as a mass vaccination center, then as a COVID booster and testing place. Try to imagine what we as a town would have done without it. And it will probably be needed again in such a capacity in the future. If the town is faced with a choice of divesting itself of either East Street School or Pettibone, and I can't quite get a read on whether we have to or not, the choice in my mind is clear. Pettibone has to stay, and we have to take care of it. If the concern with preserving the WPA murals at East Street and the other artifacts is a big concern, they can be removed, restored, and installed elsewhere, possibly Pettibone. In the meantime, the roof has to be fixed and a PM program undertaken, and it's been said many times that Pettibone is a jewel in New Milford's crown. We need to hold on to this community center. Its existence is important to New Milford, and it's a very important asset to our citizens. Thank you.
Thank you.
I don't have it anymore.
Is there anyone else who would like to address? Yes, ma'am.
My name is Angela Barna. I live at 4 Santa Lane. My husband and I bought a house in New Milford in 1984 on Summit Street that was considered a haunted house. We've come to love the town. I agree 100% with the lady that just spoke about keeping Pettibone. I was initially believing that we should consider selling the Lillis building before all these gentlemen spoke. And in that sense, I hoped that the town would hold on to the driveway and the parking immediately behind the building. And I hoped that it would be offered to a developer that would, as Barton Commons was, that would put in affordable housing. When they're allowed to put in affordable housing, developers can put more units there than would normally be permitted by zoning. And I think that Theater Works is a gem. It has helped us make a circle of friends. And not only do they have a free senior night, but every performance has a pay what you want night the following Thursday, so anyone can afford to go. So I hope that whatever the ultimate result is, that the town will keep the driveway and the parking lot behind the Lillis building. If it is sold for development, there's no reason that parking couldn't be within the footprint of that property, as it is on 25 Church Street. Thank you for hearing my concerns.
Thank you. If anyone else would like to speak at the public
I have
hearing?
a question, Pete.
Absolutely, yes, sir.
Has the Perry report on the East Street School been given out to the public?
Yep. And for those that want to see it, you can go to the town website,
Oh, it's on there?
www.newmilford.org. Yep.
Then I wish you would tell people what that meant, because you did the study a few years
Yep.
ago.
So that was done pre-COVID. That was done with some community input. They did charrettes with that. And that was done to see what the needs of the community are and what the wants are for East Street School. And as we know, we're having these talks right now for the public because COVID changed a lot of things, you know. You had pre-COVID and you had COVID now. Times have changed, needs have changed. I think it's very important. We've had different people now in our community as well that call New Milford home. So I think this is a very good first step, is getting the input from the public, because it's going to be you, the public, that's going to decide whether we keep one building, two buildings, both buildings, and then the cost. And then the cost of all the other capital that we're going to need to continue to run the town, whether it be your roads, your roofs. For instance, we're going to need 2 new roofs at the elementary school, Hill and Plain and Northville, $5 million apiece. That's today's dollars, with 20% escalations right now due to inflation annually.
Can I ask you a question?
Absolutely.
You say the townspeople, I'm getting back to townspeople are making the decision. How are they going to make the decision? Has there been any discussion on town council of committees, independent, all right, committees being formed to gather information? You seem to be talking about the cost of the buildings, but we, or many people here, are talking about the benefits to the town of these buildings. They're totally different. I could say to the town, oh, these buildings are going to cost $30 million to restore. And everybody's going to say, oh, my taxes are going to go up. Or you could say to the town, these buildings are essential to this town, whether it's 5 years from now or 100 years from now. So a lot of this, I mean, there's been no talk of committees being formed. When do you expect, here's a straight question.
Sure.
When do you expect the townspeople to decide on these buildings? Next year, in 3 months, or 2 years from now?
So, great question. We're continuing to get our information to give the public time to digest and look at the information. But we just got the needs analysis on the Pettibone Center just the other day. And for those that want to stay, Dean Petroselli will be here tonight to talk about both buildings. And I think we would be doing a disservice to our public to not quantify what the cost is going to be. For instance, I think the library, fabulous investment by the town. It's a crown jewel of the town. People use it and will continue to use it. And how did we do that? That started first with the Library Board of Trustees talking about it. Then it was the town council that did it. I actually sat on the town council at the time. And then it was the public input. On top of that, that went to referendum.
Okay.
So the $6.5 million went to referendum.
I assume it's going to go to, I assume eventually it's going to go to.
So to me, as talked about before by, I believe it was Tom, that we should look at this like we would be representative of a business. This is exactly how a business would do it first, is get the input, see the need, how these things are. From there, You then begin to fine tune how that works. Then you create the feasibility committees. Then you create the committees through the town council. But I think as of right now, I think we're kind of in the early stages for that. But rest assured, we are going to do that. And we're going to give the options for the public, because at the end of the day, right, we could sit here and say, you know, I wish we could do a billion different things, but if we don't have a roadmap, then we're setting ourselves up for failure.
Well, basically, that's my point.
Yes, sir.
The townspeople need a roadmap, and this roadmap coming from the town council maybe is not the best idea, because you need a more balanced view of those people who say, oh, it's going to cost this much money, or those people that say these buildings are essential to the history of the town and the future of the town. So that's my point again.
I think we're going in the same direction. I just think we're looking at it a little bit of different lenses.
This is the second meeting, you know,
Yeah.
well, the last meeting was just on the East Street School, and we're not going anywhere with it. I mean,
Well-
I'm sure everybody on the council has their opinion of what to do with the buildings.
Absolutely.
And everybody sitting here has their opinion of what to do with the buildings. But unless the people of the town can get both sides, it's no good.
Thank you, sir. Anybody else would like to address the committee? So I'd like to read these if I can, Stephanie, I'll give them to you. Susan Hackle, both of these buildings need to be preserved, updated, and made for the use by the community, especially the East Street School, which is a gym and a historical wonder. Continuing education, children's enrichment programs, health, all sorts of these things, these buildings could be used for this community. Turning into condos, or leveling them and putting up something new, worse still. Preserve our town's beauty and culture. Pettibone is wonderful for town events. I enjoy going to all of them. And you could make money for the town by renting them out for offices as well. I wish I could be at tonight's meeting, but please take this letter to heart. Susan Hackle. Next one is, Dear Mayor Pete, both Barry and I feel it could be beneficial to those who need it. East Street School, to have an assisted living facility in at least part of the East Street School. This would allow residents to have easy access to the center of town and to the hospital. Perhaps the town could rent the space to a provider of this type of service. In the remaining space, perhaps the food pantries could operate there as well. Thank you for listening, Barry and Mary. Last one, this is from Celeste Belmar. In an ideal world, the lower level could be Trader Joe's, and the upper floors really affordable senior housing. A long shed on the side of the parking area with carports, sort of like the senior housing in Norfolk, Connecticut. Celeste. Okay. Does anybody from the council like to talk at tonight's public hearing? Okay. I'd like to entertain, last call, anybody else would like to come up and talk during public participation? Yes, ma'am.
Question. Does the Five Star helicopter park behind the Douglas building?
Yes, ma'am, it does.
That's why I think it's vital for the town to hold on to that property, the driveway and the parking lot, in addition to theater works being a prize for this town.
Thank you. Mayor.
Mayor, I have a question. Has anyone here thought about the swimming pool that we need in New Milford that was kind of shot down a number of years ago? I think that's all part of this in terms of how we take a beautiful building like East Street and Pettibone, and we start to put those things into the future of New Milford. So, geez, sorry. So that's what I had to say.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you. Anyone else? Yes, ma'am.
Excuse me, regarding the gentleman's comments, I believe the Park and Recreation offers programs at Canterbury School where they have swimming lanes that the public can access through the Park and Recreation programs.
Thank you, ma'am. Anybody else like to speak tonight? Like to entertain a motion to close the public hearing?
So moved.
And a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, everybody. Thank you, everybody, tonight for coming. And at our regular town council, 7 p.m. tonight, we're also going to be talking about both town buildings, and we'll have Dean Petroselli that will be here to talk a little bit more about his analysis. Starts at 7 p.m. tonight. Thank you, everyone.
Talk to you in a few.
last second, over time. 7 o'clock, Mr. Mayor.
All right. If we could all rise for the pledge, please. I'm going to ask our Odyssey of the Mind team if they could lead us in the pledge. Are we ready? I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Have a moment of silence for the men and women in the armed forces, our first responders, our veterans, those fighting the good fight in Ukraine, and those suffering from the military conflict in the Middle East. Thank you. Katie, can you start us off with the American Creed, please?
Certainly. The America's Creed by William Tyler Page. I believe in the United States of America as a government of the people, by the people, for the people, whose just powers are derived from the consent of the governed, a democracy and a republic, a sovereign nation, many sovereign states, a perfect union, one and inseparable, established upon those principles of freedom, equality, justice, and humanity, for which American patriots sacrificed their lives and fortunes. I therefore believe it is my duty to my country to love it, to support its Constitution, to obey its laws, to respect its flag, and to defend it against all enemies.
Thank you. Sal, public participation.
Mr. Okasha.
Good evening again. Just want to, Tom Kapsiak, 94 Long Mountain Road. I just want to preface this because my concern should not be interpreted as either a critique of the effort that's spoken about within a resolution that's going to be discussed later, or a criticism of any of the players involved in the program. So please don't misunderstand what I'm going to say. The council is going to be asked later during this meeting to approve the town's participation in the state's Homeland Security Grant Program. The wording of the resolution that is being presented for approval by the council seems to be unnecessarily broad. The resolution does not provide any context for what is being requested by way of the resolution. However well-intended the town's participation in the program might be, as currently written, I would suggest that the resolution not be approved without further clarification of what information is to be provided and what the powers of the mayor will be. I will admit that I am inherently suspicious of authorizations written with such loose language. If I had something like this presented to me during my career managing projects for clients, I would have rejected it, since it creates a situation granting the mayor a blank check to do whatever he chooses to do. That is not, in my opinion, an appropriate delegation of authority by the council. The council should and can retain oversight of, and if necessary, pre-approval of actions taken under the auspices of this program. Thank you.
Thank you, Tom.
Thank you.
Anyone else?
Mike Sonello.
Mike Snello, 111 Willow Springs. So I'm going off the cuff. Sal, could you give me a reminder at 1 minute instead of 30 seconds? So I guess I'll present the opposition position from tonight's public hearing. We've seen the reports, and everything seems to indicate, as we kind of previously knew from previous reports on these estimations, that it's going to cost $80 cajillion to renovate and repair and keep up to snuff, if you would say so. Pettibone, and the same thing is going to be true with the East Street building. So, to me, one of the things that I wanted to point out is that what people were talking about at that public hearing isn't the building itself, that when it comes to Pettibone, but the things that Pettibone does. So to me, do you necessarily need to have it at that location? I think no, especially considering the long-term net needs that might be provided at with a better suited location and a better suited building. The question of if we're going to spend $25 million to do repairs on a building that's already 70 years old, at what point do you simply say, all right, it's time to build new? And here's my throw it at the wall idea, and it's my idea. I'm not going to blame it on anyone else. And yes, I understand my idea is flawed. All the presentations of ideas on this matter are going to come with flaws. There's no perfect answer here. To me, if you're going to be moving DPW to Century Brass, which I agree with on principle, then that project's going to be another probably 8-digit bond that we're going to have to go through. And then if we're going to have to go through these bondings, then the building that you would want to bond to do a bare minimum renovation, to me, would be the East Street School, for no other reason than that's the building that comes with the lowest opportunity cost. I'll explain what that means right now, actually. The space that is being occupied in terms of the services that are currently in Pettibone could be consolidated into the existing town facilities outside of Pettibone, especially if East Street School is to be renovated to at least a minimum threshold of occupation for those services, at least temporarily, until in the meantime you provide, with the sale of that building, Pettibone, the front end of the bonding that you're going to have to put together for a proper municipal office complex on Century Brass. If we're consolidating Park and Rec, if we're consolidating DPW onto those properties, again, not only is this going to be unbelievably expensive, then the idea of if you have to go through, let's say, the bureaucracy that goes along with development, you only go through it one time. There is a savings to that. If we're talking about pouring foundations, let's say, you pour one foundation, you pour one roof with the municipal office building, that could also possibly hold, let's say, the Board of Education, who has already said that they don't want to be in Sarah Noble. That would free up that potential school space, knowing that there is some claims that we may have to worry at some point about more school space. It's there. And to me, the Board of Ed has said that they don't look at Sarah Noble as their long-term home, and I think for good reason. And they gave a number of, I think, good reasons to not be there. So if we're going to be building a municipal office building as well over at that location, again, one foundation, one roof, raise the building, see what they need. Give something that is catered specifically to their needs. They've never really had that in a very long time at the very least, something that was purpose-built for that. Pettibone was incredibly purpose-built as a school. It was not built as a municipal office building. It was not built with the current purposes in mind. So if you give these facilities, these services, the exact building that they're looking for, then not only would you be able to replicate everything that the building and footprint that Pettibone did, let's say for COVID, you'd be able to get something potentially better because you're building specific to that need. Just as a quick reminder for folks watching at home and in the room, it's 16 acres that Pettibone sits on. The playground is a different set of property. The ball fields are on a different set of property. The dog park is on a different set of property. The grass spaces around the ball fields where people park on game day are a different set of property. This isn't the thing that would be sold in the private sector. There's also no buildings, especially if Park and Rec is moving out of where their maintenance facility is behind Wendy's. There's no municipal buildings anywhere near there. So if you're going to pick one in terms of symbiosis to at least temporarily hang on to, it would be the East Street School, which is walking distance from right here in Town Hall. The other half of that is you're sitting on a private sector gold mine for no reason. To me, you're on Pickett District Road there. You're at a corner lot that's already been developed. The building is a single story out of the multiple stories. You've got no wetlands to deal with. It's in an area on Pickett District Road that was purposely set aside many years ago for, let's say, industrial facilities like Kimberly-Clark, like CMC, like all those other industrial facilities that are already there. If you rezone it as industrial, then not only are you going to get way more money for the actual sale of the property, you're getting long-term tax enrollment, and you're providing jobs for the community that aren't just, Wendy's flipping burger jobs. Excuse me, sorry, Wendy, I didn't mean to disparage your name or anything like that, but they're very, very good jobs if we're going to have heavy industry coming into town. And even if it's not heavy industry, again, you're not just paying property taxes on the property itself, if we're talking about residential property, you're getting the industrial taxes, which are a much higher rate. The other half of this is if you're going to fund the front end of the bond with a sale of Pettibone, eventually you're going to move DPW over to Century Brass. So you fund the back end of the bond with the sale to the private sector of DPW. And to me, if you're going to have residents, that seems like the more ideal location for residential property. And for all the talk about having commuter rail, if you want to make that pitch to the Housatonic Rail Authority, it's going to be a lot easier to make that pitch when you have something like what Brookfield has in Four Corners in terms of those properties. First floor commerce, second and third residence. I'd also suggest that the businesses that are on Railroad Street that are already set up like that, so we already have property around that fits that mold, would probably love the extra foot traffic they would get from having greater residents in an area that's kind of better suited for that sort of thing. I'm not one to tell the private sector what they should do with their own property, but this is an idea that could be considered if we're going to relinquish, if a private sector company is going to come in and look at those properties. After the move from, let's say, East Street School to the new municipal office complex for all these departments, I don't know what to tell you about East Street building if it's going to be vacant. I'm not here to speak toward that. So that's my wild idea. Enjoy.
Thank you.
Thanks, Mike.
I don't have anybody else, Mr. Mayor.
Okay, thank you. Katie, the consent agenda?
Item number 4A and B, I'd like to move to approve the prior minutes in the tax collector report.
Second.
Any discussion?
Thank you. In the minutes on page 4, there's reference to our conversation you and I had, Mr. Mayor, about the safety of the high school building, and were we told by Fuss and O'Neill that it's safe? And I asked if it was in writing at that time, and you said yes, it was. I'd like that to be in the minutes, that we discussed a written confirmation of safety. Okay?
Absolutely.
Thank you.
Thank you. Anybody, anything else? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Okay. Item number 5, I'd like to move that we approve items on item number 5 for Park and Rec. These are donations, $200 from Mulvaney Mechanical. This is for the egg hunt to be held on the 30th of this month. $100 from New Milford Septic, also for the egg hunt. $75 gift card from Stop and Shop for that. $10 from Nordica Toys, and a donation of $10 from Tasty Waves. These are all for supplies to run the egg hunt, and New Milford Parks and Rec would like to thank these donors for their generosity.
Second.
Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed?
Aye.
Any abstentions? Thank you.
Item
And
number,
And Katie, before we go to number 6, I'd like to ask the council for their permission, because I'd like to introduce you to a wonderful new team that we have here in New Milford, and that's Odyssey of the Mind. And Odyssey of the Mind had their first competition, and these are our initial wonderful students from Scotticoke that created and are our initial members of the team. And Barbara, can you bring the guys up and talk a little bit about Odyssey of the Mind?
So, I'm Barbara Crandall. I live at 180 Willow Springs. And the kids. You guys say your name and where you live.
Not where you live, just your name.
My name's Lillian Dugdale.
I'm sorry.
Lillian?
Lillian Dugdale.
Hi, Lillian.
I'm Lily Crandall.
Lily Crandall.
Hi, Lily.
I'm Dylan McInerney.
Dylan
Hi, Dylan.
McInerney.
I'm Scott Flake.
Hi, Scott.
Good, nice and loud there. We are missing a few. They had other things to deal with today, so this is our group that came to say hello. I have a letter also from one of our missing students, from the mother who wrote it on behalf of Odyssey of the Mind, and she wanted to make sure that the mayor got to hear how she felt and how her son enjoyed the program. But Odyssey of the Mind is basically an out-of-the-box thinking of creativity to solve real-life problems. And it is a competition statewide. It is actually worldwide, and every state kind of holds their own competitions to get the children. They compete in 2 different problems. One is called a spontaneous problem, where you just walk into the room, they have something down on the floor for you to do, and you need to figure out how to solve it in a certain amount of time. Then they have a long-term problem, which is based on, you have 5 different selections. Each team can choose whether they want to build a vehicle. So this year's vehicle was about going to a drive-in movie, and you had to become part of the movie itself. So the kids had requirements of what that vehicle had to do, so on and so forth. They picked the classical theater route, and they had to pick a classical story and create an opening night of that classical story on a stage. And they had to incorporate not only the essence of what Treasure Island was, which was the book that they chose, but they had to have something go wrong on opening night. As the saying goes, the show must go on, and they had to go on through that, and then they had to come up with an antic about what makes them more unique than another group, and a special sound effect that was somehow created during the actual performance. So that is Odyssey of the Mind.
And Barbara, thank you, as you really were the fulcrum and the leader. We're doing this through our Park and Rec team. Barbara, I want to thank you, and just an amazing job you guys did representing the town. And we're super proud of you guys.
Can I ask a question?
Katie?
Mr. Flake, I'm sorry, what was your first name? Scott. Scott. What was the sound effect?
He's not going to like to say it.
It's a baby farting.
Okay. Well, that's unique.
Which is when paper horns come in handy.
Paper horn, very
So we
resourceful.
try to take what their own kind of uniqueness is, and Scott had this obsession with building things out of paper and making them as long as he possibly could. And Jim Hawkins was a baby on the boat when we found them, but we didn't know who he was. So when they checked the diaper to look for his name, the baby passed some gas, and Scott was that
Very
sound
clever.
effect.
How great, how great.
They had fun, and that's all.
That's great.
Yeah, thanks.
And that's one of the great things. I mean, we love the program, and I need to thank the town for being able to offer this to the kids, and hopefully it's something that we can continue to do and move on forward.
That's great. Great
Good
job,
job.
guys.
Mayor, if I could say one thing?
Absolutely, Chris.
Yeah, I just want to thank Barbara for running this program and reiterate that we are proud of these students. I'm somewhat familiar with the program. My children were in it in a different place, and it's a great program. I think it teaches kids a lot of what they can't get elsewhere, critical thinking, et cetera, and I really support this. So thank you for doing it.
Hey, Chris?
Great.
Okay, Katie?
Okay. Back to item number 6, I'd like to move that we approve the following appointments. The Opioid Settlement Committee, we're adding Amy Bethage from the Housatonic Health District, Michael Gold of Geron Health. Then we have on Historic Properties, Jennifer Harrigan. Her term will run from March 25th of 2024 through January 31st of 2028.
Any discussion?
Second.
Oh, second, thank you. Yep.
How does this then put us in position for the opioid settlement? Is this the last 2?
These are the last 2.
2, okay. And is there a plan for when they get started?
If they're approved tonight,
Yeah.
then we'll be setting up the initial meeting for the opioid settlement.
Great. Eager to hear how that all goes.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other discussion on the motion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Item 7, we have a report from the
From our wonderful youth agency.
Advisory Board of the Youth Agency.
All right.
Hi, I'm Alex Wilk, junior at Milford High School.
I'd like to start by thanking you for providing us with the opportunity to speak and share with all of you the updates regarding the ongoings with the youth agency as a whole and the Student Advisory Board. Last week was Neurodiversity Celebration Week, and April is Autism Acceptance Month. So our Student Advisory Board would like to talk a little about the neurodiverse youth in our town. The 2023 and to 2024 school enrollment for New Milford Public Schools was 3,067 students. 616 of those students are classified as students with disabilities. This is approximately 20% of the district's student population. Autism accounts for approximately 15% of the 616 students, and the numbers are steadily increasing. The other categories are emotional disability, emotional disturbance, intellectual disability, learning disability, speech language impairment, other health impairments, and other disabilities. All of these categories are on the rise. Because of the growing population of this marginalized group, the youth agency is trying to provide more programming and events geared towards these students. The following are some of the things we have offered and will continue to offer to our neurodivergent youth and their families. The youth agency has held 4 sensory-friendly movies and 1 movie sing-along. We have bi-monthly support and social group for families called Safe Place. We held themed parties and dances for Valentine's Day, Halloween, and New Year's. Santa and Mrs. Claus visited them with children for a sensory-friendly event. Parents and kids celebrated Friendsgiving together. Additionally, families met at the John Pettibone Community Center playground every Friday last summer for picnics in the park. At one of those gatherings, Water Witch Hose Company came to spray down all of the kids. They loved it. Our community resource officer at the time brought his police cruiser to one of the Safe Place meetings so the kids could explore it inside and out, including the lights and sirens, which can be very overwhelming and scary to some kids. Those parents also learned about the Take Me Home registry through the New Milford Police Department, which helps officers to be aware of specific individuals in situations like a traffic stop, a police call to a home, or if a child becomes lost. The youth agency also collaborated with the New Milford Police Department for their Shop with a Cop event the last 2 years. The youth agency has collaborated with local agencies to provide parent training and workshops like Department of Developmental Services 101 and our upcoming presentation with the Connecticut Parent Advocacy Center called Understanding Challenging Behaviors. We also gathered with parents to make vision boards and participate in a guided meditation with energy and sound bath. We had autism advocate Jeremy Farrell give a presentation called Autism and Building Skill Sets. Jeremy is autistic and shares his personal journey to inspire both youth and adults. We also worked with LHTC to include their young adults in our programs and events as both participants and mentors for younger children. The Wednesday Youth Agency will have a roundtable discussion with some of the LHTC students to see what they would like to see from our towns in regards to supporting Autism Acceptance Month, and their feedback is important. This past weekend, we held a Disney Pixar party to celebrate neurodiversity, and it was a wonderful night for families. For Autism Acceptance Month in April, our social worker, Sarah, will return to our after-school sites to read about autism, kindness, and acceptance. This is something we have done at Burnham Elementary in the past as well. Our intervention manager, Stacy, along with students, recently recorded a podcast with 4 parents who have autistic children, which is currently available to the public. Additionally, just prior to coming here tonight, the Student Advisory Board put together sensory toolkits, which will soon be delivered to different organizations in the community, such as daycares, pediatric therapy centers, and pediatric care offices. We look forward to continuing our collaborations with the New Milford Police Department, our local fire stations, and the New Milford Public Library. We are also hoping to grow our collaborations to include Parks and Rec, as well as our school district. The youth agency knows how important this work is and will continue to support our neurodivergent youth and their families as best as we can as a town agency. Any questions?
Anybody have any questions?
Great job.
Thank you.
Great job.
Thank you.
All right.
And thank you for all your support.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you. Great job.
Okay.
Okay.
Item number 8. I'd like to move that we approve a request from the Board of Education to take $150,000 from Education Capital Reserve account for the completion of an evaluation and analysis of the HVAC system in all 5 schools pursuant to the state requirement for HVAC evaluations for all school buildings.
And I have a second. And in meeting with Superintendent Parlato, our Board of Education Chairman Wendy Followback, and Matt Cunningham, who's the facilities director, this is a mandated request by the state to do the analysis, and speaking with them, the $150,000 will get that to where they need to do the evaluations. And it's coming out of their capital reserve. So I have a motion and a second. Any other discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Mayor?
Thank you. Next is, we had our public hearing earlier tonight concerning 2 of our town buildings, which is East Street School and Pettibone. And as again, we're continuing to get input from our public, as these are town buildings. These are the public's buildings. We want to hear what you have to say about the buildings and the needs. We've provided, of which the public can see on our website. If you go to www.milford.org, go to the community page on the left-hand side, you can click down the hyperlink that brings you to the East Street School analysis, the Pettibone analysis, and those were done by Petroselli and Associates, done by Dean Petroselli. And Dean is here tonight to kind of give an overview on the assessments of both of these buildings as we begin our process of vetting these 2 town buildings. Dean? What I'd like to do is have Dean go over one building, then we can do questions on the building, and go to the next building.
Good evening, folks. Again, thank you, Mayor Bass. Dean Petroselli with Silver Petroselli and Associates. We are a 55-person architecture and engineering firm in Hamden, Connecticut. I'm also a resident of New Milford on 7 Apple Lane, so I've got 2 vested interests in these projects. As Mayor Bass indicated, our firm was retained to perform the study on both Pettibone and the admin building on 50 East Street. But prior to that, we actually performed a study on the Pettibone roof back in December 8th of 2022. So there's some mention in our report on Pettibone of the roof report, and that's because our firm performed those services also. So I guess I'll start where we first started, which was on the 50 East Street facility. 50 East Street, as you know, is a 3-story, multi-level, originally school constructed in 1931, and it has about 31,000 square feet throughout those 3 floors. The site is about 4.6 acres and obviously located on East Street. We analyzed with our engineers and myself as an architect. We walked through the building on multiple occurrences, and that's how we derived our findings in our report. I just want to make clear that the final use of the building's going to affect the cost and the duration and much of what was written in our report, but I want to preface it by saying that our report assumed that we're replacing the building virtually in kind, or I should say renovating it in kind. If it becomes residential or offices or medical use, obviously there's going to be expenses and fit out and other criteria that need to be incorporated into the building, and obviously that's premature for us to speculate what that would be. So our logic going into this report was really to replace the building or renovate the building in kind, virtually replacing the components that exist in the facility with contemporary or modern components. That would also mean making the buildings code compliant, ADA compliant, and obviously looking at the infrastructure and maintaining those materials to current standards. So we had to look at it kind of holistically from a architecture and engineering standpoint. We had electrical engineers, mechanical engineers, plumbing engineers involved. We did not do a thorough structural analysis, and we handled the site components ourselves with our architectural staff. Again, I personally did the study on all three of the reports that I mentioned, so I kind of know firsthand a lot of the idiosyncrasies of the building. But generally, 50 East Street, again, is approaching 100 years in another 8 years or so. There's many components in the building that are original. The plumbing systems are original, the fixtures are original, portions of the mechanical system are original, all the underslab underground piping is original. So you're talking about components that are well over 90 years old. The mechanical system, as you know, is now non-operational. It's a steam boiler system that's fed off of the oil tank that's in the back parking lot. Obviously, the oil tank is new, but the rest of the system is very outdated. So generally, we felt that the building, while the structure was in good shape, the exterior structure is sound, the windows are relatively new. Besides that, the building needs virtually everything from new roofing, masonry repair. The cupola is in desperate need of repair. The slate roof is in desperate need of replacement. Throughout the building, there's no ADA compliance on the many levels, and even though it's a 3-level building, you actually enter in at a mid-level off of East Street and then go up or down a half a flight to get to the lower level or upper. On the lower level, there's about 8 different levels of different rooms throughout the building, so there's a lot of ADA challenges to make that building accessible. Just simply putting in an elevator is not going to catch all of those multi-levels that exist in the building. From an electrical side, we have a 400 amp service in there. We project that at a minimum, you would need about 1,000 amp for a 31,000 square foot building, contemporary building with air conditioning today. So you can hear that it's grossly undersized. The plumbing systems, again, are dated to many of them are dated to the original building. The fixtures, the piping, all the plumbing components are dated back to 1931. From a fire protection standpoint, the building does not currently have sprinklers. Likely, you would need to entertain the thought of sprinklers depending on the final use of the building. So our report does capture that in terms of the expense. From a site standpoint, again, about 4.6 acres. Many of the parking lots, sidewalks, steps at the door are all in need of replacement. The bituminous parking lot is in need of replacement. So you're virtually talking about touching every component of that building, really minus the windows. The masonry is in good shape. Some very interesting components of the building. Obviously, it's on the National Historic Registry, so it has that going for it. There's a very unique stained glass window on the north end of the building. That's very, well, obviously worth preserving at all expense. There's some interesting, what appears to be WPA artwork that's throughout the building. So there's some really interesting architectural components that should be analyzed and surely considered as you're moving forward. But generally, the building needs, in our opinion, almost everything in terms of replacing its existing finishes, floor, tile, ceilings, lighting, mechanical, plumbing. It's virtually going to need it all. We ran some preliminary numbers, and again, my caveat is we don't know how the building is going to be used, what future use would be, but to replace the building in 23 cost, we're looking at about a $12 million venture. Our report also escalated those dollars, obviously moving forward. We've seen as much as 5 to 6% in escalation in the past year. So obviously every year that this town waits to advance either East Street or Pettibone is obviously a consideration in terms of what escalation dollars mean in another year or 2 or 5. So you have to keep that in consideration. So I don't know how deep, obviously I can get in deeper, but that's kind of the overview. And Mayor, I'm not sure if you want to field questions on a one by one or wait till I'm done with both buildings.
Let's start with East Street. Does anybody have any questions on East Street so far? Mary Jane.
So in talking about the ADA requirements, and because it's multi-floors, what was your kind of estimate as to what the ADA requirements would be. Was that figured into the 12 million?
Correct. It starts with the exterior parking lot. We have to be able to provide handicap, van, and vehicular parking spaces. We have to have an accessible route from that parking stall into the building. We can't have any steps at the main doors, which many of your doors do have steps in them. And once you're in the building, pretty much any public building would require full accessibility to all levels of the building. So that would mean an elevator that catches those multi-levels, likely lifts that catch those levels that are not accessible from the main levels, accessible doorways, accessible toilets, plumbing fixtures, electrical devices mounted at the right height, fire alarm annunciator panels that are mounted at the right height. All of that would entail the ADA component, and yes, all of that was included as part of that 12 million figure that's in our report.
And when you break that down, what would that be as part of that 12 million? What would the ADA compliance come to?
I don't have the numbers off the top of my head, but if I recall, there were probably in excess of 2 or 2.5 million of that. The elevator being a big component of that. A 3-stop elevator is going to be close to $500,000 plus the lifts just for that one component.
Mm-hmm.
It's baked in because there's other, for instance, we have to replace the doors and we have to replace the toilet fixtures. The urinals are floor mounted, which are no longer allowed by health code. So you have general building code criteria, and then you have ADA criteria, and sometimes those two overlap. So we have to replace them regardless of ADA, just from a building code standpoint, and we get the added benefit, obviously, of ADA. So the question's not very linear as much as you'd like it to be, but in that range is what I recall the true ADA components are. But there's other elements that are ADA related, but also building code related.
Thank you.
Katie?
Dean, having been in there, as you said, when you go in the front door, it's not a matter of you're just going to step up. You go up, and then down. Every level has that sort of false floor. Actually, there is a false floor, isn't there, on top of something?
Well, only the first floor has let's call it the split level. When you enter the building off of East Street, you're actually between floors 1 and 2. Floors 2 and 3 do not have that same feature. They're just above the lower level floor. So it's a half level from the main door up, or a half level down to the multi-purpose room, but the upper floors don't have those same mid-levels like the main level do.
But the side entrance, where you can walk up steps or go down a couple steps to get into the base level, what would you do with that? Bring it all down to one level?
You have to grab an elevator that's going to catch as many levels as possible. We would likely have an elevator that would catch at least 4 levels, and then we're going to have, or you would need to have lifts that would catch those bookend. There's bookend, what were classrooms, 4 classrooms that are a different level than all the other levels. You would have to have lifts. Sometimes those are only 3 or 4 risers off of the stair landing, but you would have to have lifts. So there'd be multiple vertical transportation equipment in that building to be able to capture all of the required ADA levels.
Got it.
Now, again, depending on what the use of the building would be ultimately and how much of that existing building would be retained, that answer may vary. In other words, we might be able to infill those 4 corner classrooms, bring them up a few feet, and get them level with the landing, and then eliminate the need for that. So a lot of options or variables.
Your pricing, though, was doing what you just said, leaving
Our
as it
pricing
is.
was to restore the building in kind, bringing it up to code compliance. And that would be IBC code, which is our building code, and ADA compliance.
Thank you.
Any other questions, Sal?
So then I have a question. So in your estimation, how long would it take to restore, and you're emphasizing this quite a bit, to that can't use to be as a school, nothing else, as just restore, and probably leave the windows. How long would it take to get something like this to be done?
These are always loaded questions, like asking a painter how long it'll take to paint your house.
Approximate.
Some will say 2 weeks and some will say 6. So, you know, a $12 million project, even a large contractor doing $1 million a month of construction is challenging. My guess would be this would be an 18 to 24 month
So
exercise.
2 years, we're talking.
Yes.
So the prices can, can go up and down, not down actually, within those 2 years, right? As we're doing stuff, the thing can actually exceed the 12
Sure, so
million.
that's why I mentioned the escalation. In our report, we projected out an escalation. So you always want to look at the midpoint of construction. So if you were to start today and it's 2 years of construction, the midpoint would be a year from now. You should look at that number and not today's number. So you're
Understood.
always looking forward of escalation.
Understood, I just wanted that to be spelled.
Absolutely,
so
and that's
people
why I
keep
preface
people-
it by every year we wait, we're obviously increasing that 12 up at about 5 or 6% a year, and that's been the last 2 years of escalation.
The cost is going up. I don't have more questions.
Any other questions? Mary Jane?
Just one more question, and maybe you mentioned this, I might have missed it. In talking about the foundation, is the foundation totally intact? There's no cracks? Nothing has to be
Yeah,
repaired?
we did not do a thorough structural analysis. However, on a masonry building, we would see any significant settling in the concrete or in the masonry. It is a exterior load-bearing masonry building, and there are no signs of any significant settling in the masonry. So we were confident that structurally the building was sound. I was up in the attic for an extensive period of time. The framing in the attic is sound. The one element that I do mention in the report is there is one crack in a concrete beam over the boiler room, which is actually underneath the stage that I made reference to, that definitely needs to be looked at further. But besides that one structural component that I mentioned, there were no other structural deficiencies that were obvious in our visual report. Again, we didn't do any destructive testing. We did not open up any walls. We did not peer into it that deep. But definitely from a visual standpoint, the exterior and load-bearing components of the building appear to be sound. There's no signs of any structural concerns, minus that beam over the boiler room.
Is this report available to the public?
Yep, it's on the website.
Okay. Just
Absolutely. www.milford.org. Click on Community. Click down East Street School hyperlink, and you'll see all the links. Pettibone, East Street School, Lillis, the Prairie Associates. All of that is on the web page.
So it's fair to say they knew how to build them back in 1931?
They sure did.
They did. It's a beautiful building. The architect in me loves it, but I'm trying to stay disconnected from that.
Todd, did you have a question?
Thank you. Dean, what are you scoping, or what is the mindset behind your HVAC and your domestic hot water there? I know you got to repipe the building for distribution, but what are you thinking?
We assumed that we'd be replacing it with VRF gas-driven, high-efficiency gas boilers. Obviously, we could go to oil.
Why wouldn't you just go to VRF? It's a building that could easily be electrified with not a drop of fossil fuels in the building.
We could. There's an added expense of doing that. And again, our
I got
study.
about $1.2 million to do your domestic hot water and all the HVAC in that building. That's probably a little high. Now, if this is going to be a union job, that could be $2 million. But if this really was done the proper way, it's maybe $1.2 million, and you've got that entire infrastructure in with not a drop of fossil fuels in that place. So you could take that tank that was wasted in the parking lot out, and maybe we can come up with a secondary building off the back of this building eventually that's got underground, that's got a below-level parking garage or below-level parking with some mixed use up above, senior housing, and plenty of parking for the theater. But I would encourage you to stay away from any fossil fuels coming into that building. Gas is not the future here at all. Guess it was a loaded question, Dean, sorry.
It's okay.
Kate?
Again, a lot of options moving forward, and our job here wasn't to look at options moving forward. Our job really was to analyze and replace in kind the existing building. So again, a lot of variables as we go down the road.
Dean,
Thank you.
just to ask one more time, to kind of reiterate for people watching and for me, when you say you worked at it in kind, which is the way you should have done it, so that means that the gym floor in your numbers would be made into a good gym floor. The number of bathrooms, or, kids' bathrooms that they had there and whatever, that's what you priced out, not men's and women's and whatever, but they're going to be all, whatever there are, they're going to be ADA. And then the size of the rooms, because they're classrooms, that's the in-kind that you worked with, right?
Sure. We don't know if it's going to be an office that's going to
Sure.
need 150 square foot spaces, or if it's going to stay as a school at 800 square foot spaces. So again, my caveat was, we don't know what your future fit out or demand for the building is going to be. So it was impossible to project what that would cost, because we don't know what that use is. Same with fixture count. Fixture count is a byproduct of occupant load. Occupant load is a byproduct of the use of the building. An assembly has more people than a business and needs more toilets.
Yep.
So the toilet count varies depending on the future occupancy of the building and the future use.
And you did that for all 3 levels, right?
Correct.
Everything. Great, thank you.
Mayor?
Chris?
Yep, thank you. Dean, I don't think the cost includes any sort of asbestos remediation, and I don't know if it deals with the mold issue that we have in there. Would you expect that the project itself, by revamping the building, would take care of the mold issue? And do you think you'd have to disturb any of the asbestos? Would there be any extra costs that we should think about there?
We excluded environmental as part of our study, knowing that extensive analysis has been done. It's safe to say that there definitely will be expenses related to environmental disturbance and cleanup in the building, including the mold. And absolutely, virtually anything that we're proposing in our study is going to impact environmental, and there'll be costs associated with that impact. Again, depending on what is the final solution to the building is going to dictate how much or how little we're going to disturb of those existing components. But yes, it's safe to say that we are aware that there's environmental issues in the building, and they will need to be taken care of with any disturbance or any future plans for that building. So those were excluded as part of our numbers.
Got it, thank you.
Any other questions on Pettibone? Okay. Or, I'm sorry, East Street. Next, we're going to move to Pettibone, but before we do that, Barbara, there's a couple of the Odyssey of the Mind team over there. They look a little tired. I don't know if they want to skedaddle out of there.
Everybody have dinner yet?
We don't take it personal.
Oh.
I think it's time to go.
Do you want to put a loud noise?
No, that's fine. Thank you.
And I'm going to give you something on Wednesday that you can give the team, for the team. All right, for our thanks for being our first Odyssey of the Mind team.
Yeah, great.
Start of many more.
Absolutely.
Good.
Great job, guys.
Good job, thank you for coming.
Sure.
You want to do it now?
Yeah.
I'll do it. Sure.
All right, all right.
Okay. I'll do it.
You do with the whole town council, you guys are just. I think the whole town council should be in it. That would be awesome. We were discussing. You gotta be in the middle.
I gotta do it very bad.
We love our shirts. You gotta read everything on there.
Good.
Yeah, just a little, right? 6'4.5" now. Come on, guys.
Tallest one there.
Mr. Murphy, right?
Say Gorgonzola.
Oh, it's okay. They were dying, right?
It is good. It's good to see how it all works, right?
Yes. You guys want a picture? They don't want me the picture? You're too good for the picture? Well, no. Can you guys watch all the stuff? Yeah, she.
All right. So Dean, can you start talking about Pettibone?
There you go.
Thank you.
I'll give it a few minutes until a few come back.
It's just the attorney at work right now.
That was Randy. He's our town attorney. You can go ahead.
Great. So let's talk about Pettibone. I drive by this building every day too, so I understand your struggle. The original building was built in 1953, and it was an L-shaped building that fronted on Danbury and Pickett District Road. So that L-shaped portion of the building is the original 1953. Even by 57, only 4 years later, they realized they needed more square footage and built that east side addition that's adjacent to the fields. And then only 6 years later, they then built the south addition in 1963. So in a very short period, they built the original building and those two additions. You'll notice, or now that I mentioned the dates, that the original building was predominantly a sloped roof, one-story building. And the two additions, the 57-63, were flat roof additions. So they didn't carry the theme of those sloped roofs through those two additions. We analyzed the roof, again, back in 22, December 14th of 22 was our final report. And that report concluded that the roof was in dire need of replacement. It had been replaced, obviously, many times since 53, but the roof has significant infiltration. There's water underneath the membrane. There's water coming in throughout your building, as I'm sure you're all aware. And our report in 22 concluded that there was no repairing, there was no patching, there's no salvaging. The only solution, because the water is below the membrane into the insulation, would be to replace that roof. There's a few different deck types, roof deck types on the building, but besides the 63 portion, it's predominantly what's called a tectum panel deck. So this was kind of a hybrid post concrete decks and pre-metal decks. They were making a composite deck called tectum, and that's predominantly what your building is made of. It holds up well to moisture, but eventually the deck will fail if it gets too damp. So it is, in my opinion, critical that the roof be addressed, and I think our report 2 years ago stipulated that the roof needs to be addressed. In terms of the building itself, it's only a one-story building. There's only one subterranean space in the building, which is predominantly the boiler room and the mechanical crawl spaces. There are tunnels throughout the building, which was a common way of feeding these old facilities. Those tunnels provided the mechanical and plumbing and water distribution throughout the building. Again, we analyzed this from an architectural standpoint through the site all the way into the building from a mechanical, electrical, plumbing, and fire protection standpoint. The parking lot out front is in need of replacement. Many of the exterior doors, like East Street, do not have compliant entries. There's steps at many of the doors. Really, the only door that doesn't have a step is the front door on Pickett, and then the two kind of bookend doors on either end of the main entry doors. But really, all your other doors have non-compliant ADA steps throughout them. Architecturally, the building has predominantly VCT flooring, but we believe that there's asbestos flooring underneath it that would need to be further analyzed. Like East Street, we did not account for any environmental cleanup as part of our study, because that was done as an independent study prior to our firm coming in. So again, all of my numbers do not include any environmental impact. We do a lot of schoolwork. A lot of schools of this era, virtually all of them, have some form of environmental impact, mostly asbestos, but occasionally PCBs and lead paint. All of that would need to be analyzed down the road if Pettibone is a future building to be maintained. The floors are in pretty poor condition throughout the building. A lot of ECT tiles coming up, especially in the main corridor and in the cafeteria. It's a tripping hazard. It's a danger. I know the building is marginally used, some of those spaces, but obviously other spaces are occupied by various departments in town. Like East Street, we concluded that the building needs almost everything architecturally. Unlike East Street, many of the windows are the original windows. Single glazed, non-thermally broken aluminum frames, predominantly throughout the facility with a few exceptions. The exterior building and structure, we believe, is sound. Again, like East Street, we didn't see any structural concerns in the building. But in terms of needing the infrastructure replaced, like East Street, many of the components are original to 1953, 57, or 63. That includes fixtures, finishes. Some of the classrooms, or many of the classrooms, are exposed tectum deck. They're cathedral ceiling. The rest of them are dated 2x2 or 2x4 lane ceilings. Again, a lot of infiltration from the roof, which has resulted in many failed and removed and missing ceiling tiles throughout the building. From a mechanical, electrical, plumbing standpoint, like East Street, it virtually needs a total gut of all of the systems. There's nothing besides a fire alarm panel that's relatively new, and just the panel, not the backbone infrastructure. Virtually everything in the building dates back to the original construction. So in our opinion, this building, obviously more than twice the size of East Street, needs the equivalent amount of work. From an ADA standpoint, obviously, it's one level, so we save on the need of an elevator, but still the individual rooms need accessibility. The doors are not accessible. The fixtures and the toilets are not accessible. Not all the spaces are accessible, and all of that would need to be modernized in terms of any future alteration. Again, mechanical, totally gut, electrical. While your light fixtures in both buildings are retrofit with newer LED fixtures, there's still the old housing with retrofit lamps, and we would recommend all of that be replaced as part of any renovation. Again, like East Street, this building was never designed for air conditioning, so the service is grossly undersized for likely any future use of the building, so we anticipated that we would be improving or increasing that circuitry and the service entering the building. We also assumed, like we did at East Street, that this building would be eventually sprinklered, so we carried those dollars as part of our study analysis and our cost estimates. But again, not knowing how this building will be ultimately used, it's difficult or impossible to project if those sprinklers are absolutely necessary, but depending on many uses, they likely would be. So we concluded, again, with the same logic of escalation, we concluded that this building needs approximately $25 million to replace it in kind. I think it's worth mentioning, and I'm surprised somebody hasn't asked the question, so I'll cut it off and answer my own question, is if we were to build these same buildings today new, what would the cost of construction be? And that's always an interesting analysis as we're trying to analyze buildings and their future use. We do a lot of new construction in our firm. We've seen numbers in the $600 to $700 a square foot range for this type of building.
East would be near impossible to duplicate today, but even if you were to replicate it today, that building would likely be $700 or $800 a square foot. So the numbers that I'm talking of reno of 12 million or 25, you would talk about numbers that are more than double that if you were to replace these buildings with new buildings in kind. So there's surely a value of maintaining the existing superstructure, structure, and the components that are salvageable. As you can see, we can renovate for half that cost versus brand new construction. So that should always be considered as we're analyzing how to move forward with these buildings. I will kind of end Pettibone with.
Just a quick question. Did you give us a number for new for Pettibone? Would that be equivalent? Double?
Yeah, we do a lot of school work. If you were to build a new school today, they're coming in anywhere between $600 and $700 a square foot.
Okay,
Yeah,
just
not
one.
counting the land, yeah,
Right.
which you
Just
wouldn't be
wanted to confirm.
purchasing.
Thank you.
What was very unique at Pettibone, if you folks haven't been in it, you probably heard the rumors. The 1963 Southern Edition that backs up to Three Brothers Restaurant there on the south side has a very unique petroleum odor in the building. The building is not occupied. It's virtually used as all storage. We surely couldn't conclude where the odor was coming from. Personnel and maintenance indicate that it's been there for many, many years. It is definitely something that was intense enough at our walkthrough that it really should be analyzed further, likely starting with some environmental experts to try to pinpoint what it is. But that would definitely need to be addressed, and we did not even begin to try to estimate what that would entail, because honestly, we didn't know what the source was to even begin to throw dollars associated with that. So again, a few caveats with my number and our analysis, but that particular condition, we did not bake into our $25 million price tag.
Dean, is a lot of the ceiling there drop ceiling? I haven't been in a few years. My kids were both there from kindergarten on. I don't remember.
All of the sloped ceilings, so under the gym, under the CAF, and under the original 1953 classrooms, those cathedral classroom ceilings are all exposed tectum deck. Some of them have drop ceilings. Many of them are still exposed. The rest of the building is predominantly lay-in ceilings, acoustical ceilings.
It is. Was there spline? Did they cover the spline ceilings originally?
There's old
That's what
1x1 spline.
Right. So that's where the glue dot.
There are glue daubs. There are visible glue daubs, and of those of you that don't know that term, they always placed 4 glue daubs on a 1x1 tile. That was pre-acoustical ceiling tiles, and those were adhered to a substrate. 99 times out of 100, those glue daubs are hot, asbestos.
Right.
So yes,
Same with the glue dots that hold the blackboards on the wall.
Correct.
So now I was aware of what was in the ceiling and behind there, but now you're also saying it's in the flooring.
Absolutely. We definitely saw 9x9 underneath the 12x12, so the 12x12 was laid over the 9x9.
Yep.
Facilities also confirmed that that's what they've seen when they've pulled the 12x12. So yes, Pettibone definitely, like East, is going to have environmental cleanup as part of any future. And again, even if you demolish the building, you're required to clean it before you fill landfills. So whatever you do with either building, the cleanup is a necessity. And again, that is not included in our number.
What's the estimation of that? Of how many years, months?
My same logic is going to be over 2 years, between 2 to 3, depending on the use of that building. Again, that's going to vary depending on which contractor was awarded and how big and how hungry they are. But yeah, my opinion is that building would take 2 years of construction.
Understood. It's not 6 months, it's 2 years.
It's not 6 months.
Understood. I just want everybody to hear that.
So, Dean, some of the outside walls, one of my criticisms there is, my kids both were there. That single pane wall that is an exterior wall, if you really lean on that wall, and I remember when we were looking at that school, when we closed it, one of the reasons was was some of the safety of those walls. I mean, you could knock that wall down with a lawnmower. I mean, this was not the exterior structure, which had exterior doors, was not very strong at all.
No. Yeah, the original building predominantly was a masonry building, but the majority of the exterior facade was an aluminum, virtually floor to roof, an aluminum storefront system that they glazed and then paneled. And that is really relying just on those aluminum mullions, vertical and horizontal, that create that exterior plane of a wall. And absolutely, our budget assumed, I'm carrying $8.5 million just for exterior architectural improvements. Of this 25, I'm carrying $8.5 million, and a good portion of it is going to that window wall system. That, in our opinion, that window wall system needs to be totally removed and reinstalled with a contemporary system. It's single glazed, it's structurally not appropriate, and there really is no value in salvaging or trying to save any of it.
And I'm assuming you're going to insulate it, either spray foam it, insulate it to the current code.
Be thermally broken insulated frames.
I mean, there was a thermal bridge there with that aluminum everywhere. It was
kind of, sort of.
Yeah, I thermal imaged that building. It was brutal.
Yeah.
Absolutely brutal. In the wintertime, no matter how much the heat was cranking, that aluminum was a radiator.
And it's mostly quarter-inch single pane glazing.
Glass,
So yes, it's.
But you're carrying $8 million for that.
If it's 10 degrees outside, it's 12 degrees on the inside.
On the inside of that glass, yep.
So Dean, just the same kind of question I asked you before. In looking at this to bring it back to in-kind, there's a door that you got out to recess really quickly when I was in school. But you're counting those doors as part of the in-kind rebuild, right?
Yeah, we replaced, as part of this number, we replaced virtually all of the doors and hardware throughout the entire building.
Yeah, okay. So that's,
Mary Jane?
Talk to me about the water supply. Is it town water, or do they have private wells there, or what's the water supply there?
It's on town.
Has it always been on town water?
I don't know the history of it.
I don't know, like when it was built in...
Didn't you go to school there?
No.
Oh,
No, I came after.
We can find out, but it's on town water, town sewer.
What?
Yeah, I think it's always
on town
been.
water, town sewer.
Yeah.
Okay, now, but I wondered,
We can find out.
It's just, I don't know, I would really like to see the environmental study done as part of this figure, because I just think, it would just give us so much more information environmentally to have the soil tested, water tested, whatever else needs to be tested.
Yeah, no, we agree, and we excluded it as part of this. Doing a thorough analysis, PCBs are very prevalent in this age building. PCBs were common in electrical components. They were mostly common in caulk and glazing and window glazing, and you're absolutely right. When you test for window PCBs, you're also testing the soil because if any of it leached down or dripped down from that water cascading over that material to the soil, then the soils are tested. Asbestos, as I mentioned in this building, lead paint, it all should be tested, and it is absolutely a critical number to know moving forward on both buildings.
Yeah, and
I have a feeling the impact is going to be similar on both. However, Pettibone has more land and more building, and therefore there may likely be more expense associated with Pettibone. But again, on a square foot basis, that makes total sense.
My other concern is the potential for PFAS contamination too, like in the soil around the building. I don't know. It's a possibility. Who knows? We're not sure. But I would really like to see that number for the environmental piece included.
Yeah, hiring an environmental firm is obviously an option. It'll be a costly endeavor to do a thorough analysis. They virtually have to go in and extract material of every potential component that would be hot, send that to a lab, and then those results come back and they then can derive, are the glue daubs hot? Is the tack board adhesive hot? Are the under sinks hot? Is the exterior window glazing and compound have PCBs? All of that is the process that would need to happen to to derive at that number to understand the full scope of environmental impact.
And I think that's critical. I think that's a very critical piece, because if environmentally it's not sound, we don't go any further, in my opinion.
And if we ever were to sell the property, whoever, it'd have to be done by somebody, and the cost would be allocated to whomever, but it has to be done.
Sure, sure.
Same in East Street.
Likely anybody coming in to purchase it would be interested in any environmental impact, sure.
And same for East Street.
Sure, absolutely. And as I said, even demoing the building, you would be
You still
required
have
to
to
do
do
the
it.
same.
Right.
Any other additional questions right now for Dean? Okay.
Thank you, Dean.
Dean, thank you so much for coming tonight.
Thank you.
Thank you, Dean.
Okay, what I'd like to do is ask the pleasure of the council before we get to economic development, finance, and the resolution, if we could do road closures in Sullivan Farm, as Mr. Mankin has been sitting here instead.
Okay. Is everybody all right with that?
Yep.
Moving it ahead? Okay. Item number 10, I'd like to move that we approve the following road closures. For the Mariel Center, they'd like the, by the way, this is all pending Traffic Authority. Traffic Authority approved the Chapel Hill Road. This Mariel Center closure has no dates, but they approved it, so I guess we should too, huh?
There's several dates, it's like every Saturday or something.
Not for Mariel, I don't see it.
No, I don't know what the list is, but there's several dates, they do it like every Saturday.
Oh, that's what you're saying, there are several, okay. Well, let's move down to 10B. Bank Street Investments would like to close Bank Street April 27th, 2024, from 1 p.m. to 8 p.m. for the spring sip and stroll. That is pending Traffic Authority approval. Item 10C, Bank Street Investments would like to approve to close Bank Street on the following dates for their Rock the Block concerts, which go from 3 to 9 p.m. And there is a list of dates that run from April, June, July, August, September, with rain dates, again pending Traffic Authority approval. And then item 10D, New Milford Parks and Rec is requesting the following roads to be closed for their 8-mile and 5K races July 27th. Bennett Street, Church Street, intersection of Church Street, Elm Street, Main Street northbound, Main Street southbound at various times that range from 5:30 a.m., looks like till about 10:30 a.m.
Second.
Thank you.
Any discussion? All's in favor?
Aye.
Oh, I'm sorry. Mayor.
Whoop. Yes, Bob?
My question is, if all these other people were able to give you the dates and times, is that list attached?
I got it.
Yes.
It's attached in our,
And that's agreeable to all of you?
Well, I'll tell everybody what, I'm not going to read it completely, okay? Just remember that the times they want is from 6:30 to 10 p.m. And it starts with Saturday, June 1st, and goes through the Saturdays of June. Then it goes.
Mariel Center there.
This is Mariel, the first one that I said didn't have any. Then we have 3 dates in July, 4 dates, 5 dates in August. September has, has 6 dates. They vary Friday, Saturday, Sunday. And the road closure would only be required if the field across the road from the Mariel Center, which is at 8 Chapel Hill Road, is too wet to use for parking.
That's good to know.
But anybody who's thinking of looking into why this is closing, I suggest you read this online, because there's a lot of times and dates, mostly 6:30 to 10. Thank you, Bob, for finding that. I didn't know that was in there.
Thank you for clarifying.
Okay.
We have a motion and a second. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you.
Do we want to move to number 11?
Yes.
Okay.
Move to Sullivan Farm, as Mr. Macon's been.
I would like to move to approve that we accept the donation from the Friends of Sullivan Farm that would be used to fund 2 full-time positions at the farm, which will cease to be funded at the end of this month, as was explained by Mr. Mankin when he talked to us a couple months ago. The Friends of Sullivan Farm have agreed to provide the funding necessary to continue both positions. The donation would be broken down as followed: $31,985.75 to be placed into payroll account 1044190351000. $1,983 to be placed into the town's FICA account, $463 to be placed in the town's Medicare account, and $4,643.56 to be placed into the town's medical account. This would bring the total donation from the Friends of Sullivan Farm for these two positions to a total of $39,075.31.
We have a second.
And I have to make a note that Stephanie, so you know, I said the $463 was to go to the town's medical account. It's the town's Medicare account. The $4,643 is the medical account. Okay.
So we have a motion and a second. Any discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you, Mr. Macon.
There's an additional 10,000 beyond the 39 in that letter.
Was that what we talked about the last meeting?
Yep, there's an additional 10, yep, an additional 10,000, so you can make that a second motion.
49,000.
Okay. Item 11A, or B. I'd like to add, I'd like to make a motion to add to the agenda, please, item 11B.
Second.
That's $10,000.
Everybody okay with that? Okay. I'd like to move that we add to this money that we've been talking about, an additional $10,000 from the Friends of Sullivan Farm that would be placed into account 10441-903-51000, which will offset the recent and anticipated increases in the minimum wage.
Second.
Any discussion? This again is a donation from the Friends.
Yep.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions? Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Macon. Thank you.
Thanks for keeping an eye on us, Mark.
Now, if we could go back to economic development update.
Oh, yes.
First is I met with the Commercial Brokers Association. They had their meeting. This is a regional brokers in the New Milford, Danbury, Newtown, Ridgefield area, and they actually were at Edelman's property that's for lease, and they held their meeting. And we spoke about the good news of New Milford, how it's becoming very vital, how they're seeing a lot of interest in New Milford. Talked about some of the new development that's coming up, and I'll talk a little bit about that in just a moment. Also went down to Ridgefield and met Mayor Rudy down there. Also Lisa Scales, who is the cultural district in the Danbury area here in New Milford. We have two cultural organizations regionally that kind of separate New Milford. You have the Danbury one, and then you also have the Northwest Hills that kind of cut New Milford in half. We went down and talked a little bit about the arts and how that is an economic driver for towns and cities. And Rudy talked a little bit about what was presented to us at public hearing before, the Ridgefield Playhouse and how that spurred a ton of economic activity. That was a former town building that's leased to the Playhouse, and how that's become not only a town but a regional hub for arts and entertainment, how that's really worked and helped out, and we'll be bringing forward more of that information to the next meeting to the council. Also met a gentleman that gave a presentation to the surrounding towns concerning the arts and the data behind economic vitality, as one of the options could be for East Street School, with some component of it being towards our arts community. So we'll have more information when that comes about. Continuing on some of the projects that we see moving forward here in New Milford. Starting north on Route 7, you have East Coast Connector, who's putting their steel. It's pretty much up. Across the street from there, you have the Roger Sherman commercial buildings. Those are where the cottages are. They're a little bit above the cottages. Coming into this, into northern New Milford here, where S.J. Barrington's is. That whole pad there is being redeveloped. Right next to that is the commercial or the storage facility. That's, I think the outside's pretty much built. I'm not too sure. They're doing some inside work. Then moving up Route 7, you have the, what's that?
The Boardman Butcher?
Well, that's way on the other side. I was going to go there, but.
Oh, I thought you were
but
still going
okay, we can
north,
go
sorry.
north, sorry. Where Boardman Road is, we have the Boardman Butcher Shop that's going to be opening up where Bonnie Manning's place used to be. That's exciting. And then kind of going back up
Backside.
Route 7, backside there. Hopefully in the next few weeks, there'll be talk about where the auto dealership O'Reilly's is. There's going to be someone taking over those 2 pads and then announcing what they're going to be doing there. Moving more north, you have the Dairy Queen that should be opening in July. Across the street where the Staples Plaza is, you have, hopefully now, they're working on getting their grease trap put in the ground, is the taco place. And then the Dominican restaurant's going to be moving in there too. And then there was on and off talk about a gym being where the old TJ Maxx was. That is actually happening, from what I'm being told. You then go on to Still River, and you have Garrity Plumbing. Their steel is up. Across the street, you have O&G is putting in a facility where people that are in the trades can rent out units, kind of condo units there, which is much needed. On the corner there is the masonry and the textile headquarters going into Pickett District. On the commercial side, you have Mr. Baruzzi, and then you have FSM Excavation that's there. And then you go down a little south, kind of across the street, excuse me, diagonally from Pettibone, you have the paint facility that paint exotic cars.
Oh, right.
They're there. Excuse me. And then as far as housing, as you see, right across the street here, 25 Church Street, is the 830G Affordable Housing Project. The shell's pretty much done. They're working on the mechanicals inside. You then go up to next to the police department. That's another 830G affordable housing project. They're continuing to work on that, inside mechanicals. I think they're working on some of the outside deck and windows that are there. Moving more north to where the old funeral home was, that's another 830G project, 4 units. Going on Boardman, I believe all the COs are done for that 830G complex that's happening.
The one behind the,
Yep, the one on Boardman.
yeah, there are
right
lights
there.
on them.
Yep. So I believe all the COs have been issued for that development. Then going on back onto Pickett District, you have the 110 units that are market rate townhomes, and then 3 retail pads. I believe they were doing some of the clearing on that particular entity. And then there were some of the public asking about a traffic study. I believe that's being done concerning that and traffic congestion on those areas as well. Staying on in kind of a short way, it does talk a little bit about economic development and traffic safety as well. Is tomorrow we're doing the virtual beginning of the town audit with the Connecticut Department of Transportation. Then we're going to do the physical audit on Wednesday. So the Connecticut DOT will be here. You'll be seeing them. There'll be police cars in the front and the back of the van or bus that will be there as they begin to assess the areas of Route 7. And then it takes about 2.5 months for them to complete the audit, which will be brought here to council. And we can talk a little bit about it. We all are cognizant that it is a state road, and the state has jurisdiction on the road, but they're wanting to partner with the town as far as some of the thoughts that they have of creating a more safer road system. Spoke to Hart Transportation when it's concerning putting on the bus shelters for those that we see, unfortunately, when you drive by, especially on Route 7. There are areas where people are getting off the bus and in inclement weather, there's no shelter for them, so they're looking to be putting shelters in there in tandem with sidewalks as well. And that's pretty much what I have for economic development update. Mayor.
Just a little bit about the old Boardman Bridge.
Yes, sir.
Has that been, reconstituted?
So Boardman Bridge, that went out to bid. The bids came in, the bids were much higher than the money that we have for the ARPA funding. So I spoke with Jack, it's gonna go back out to rebid with different alternates and phases on there. The main phase being what the cost would be to make it walkable. As we all know, we want that to be part of our river, part of the river walk, and especially into Sega. And then do it in stages versus the one thing, because the cost is just prohibitively too high. So that's gonna be going back out. Yes, sir. Any other questions? Okay. Finance update, our finance director will be back next week, so that's good news.
Yes.
He wanted to let us know that, obviously, the budget has moved from the town council to the Board of Finance. So the Board of Finance is gonna have their public hearing, so the public can opine on the budget. Is the 4th, right? Is it the 3rd or the 4th?
The third
The
is
third.
the third is a public hearing.
3rd is a
9th
public hearing,
right.
here at 7 PM, and the 9th is going to be the deliberations that the Board of Finance will deliberate on the budget. They can make adjustments, as we know, but maybe the public might know, just by category, not by line item. And then, once they make any recommendations and adjustments, if they do, or they may send it as is, and that goes out to the public for referendum, and they'll set the referendum date.
Along with the town
Yep.
side.
Correct. And that's what I have for the finance update.
Okay, shall we move on to D?
Yes.
Item 9D. We have a resolution for the town of New Milford to participate in the State Homeland Security Grant Program, and I'd like to move that we do approve for our participation. And if you do, then I'll have to read this.
Thank you, Katie. And, do we have a second? Thank you, Tom. And Randy, could you, Randy, if you could opine, we had public participation talking about amending the resolution. As this is done by the state, so the state.
I didn't draft this. This came from, I don't know where it came from.
So the state, once they ask for Homeland Security, you have to to get the money, you have to go by basically the template they provide.
Well, yeah, I mean, I could tighten this up considerably, but, because it's very broad. But the state, I don't know what the state requires. I haven't seen the grant application. I haven't seen what the grant came in at. And I don't know if this language came from the state.
Yes.
Tom's right, by the way. This is incredibly broad.
But it did come from the
But
state.
if this came from the state, I have no power to amend it. And if it's a condition of the grant, then I don't want to mess with it. Now, having said that, it would be better drafted if it said that the mayor would be acting on the demands of the state, not on because the mayor can't make up the standards. And it would also have a reporting requirement. It doesn't have that. So if the state requires this, I agree. It's very broad.
But the verbiage on the resolution states that it's the State of Connecticut Department of Emergency Services and Public Protection Division of Emergency Management and Homeland Security, any and all documents. So the fact that that's in there tells me that's what they want. I'm not arguing with what your thoughts are.
My lawyer mind doesn't tell me I make those assumptions, but
No,
the fact
but,
is that.
yeah, but I'm not you, see, I'm not a lawyer. I'm just saying is that where else would that, I'm just curious, where else?
It wouldn't come from me.
Right.
So maybe it came from the state. I think the second paragraph is the one that's an issue for me.
Yes.
But the fact is that we've done this before with Homeland grants. And
yes,
have
we
been
did.
admonished when I was involved in doing them. And bond counsel was involved in one of them. And they said, our way or the highway.
Right,
This is
exactly.
years ago. This is
Right.
under the Murphy administration.
Right.
Remember that?
That's right.
It was like, it was a tussle.
And
So I don't know,
Homeland Security.
Tom's right. It's very broad. I don't know what they require. If they require this, then I have no power to modify it.
Are you saying you'd like to ask, find out?
No, because
Okay.
that's gonna create a bureaucracy.
There you go.
That's
right.
gonna, and then we're gonna get into bureaucratic morass.
Yeah, that's right.
You know, it happened, you were on the council when that happened.
Yes. Mary Jane has a question.
Two questions. First, it says federal fiscal year 2023. It's 2024, so why
grant-
2023?
The grant was issued at 2023, but it must last until Or do you think it could be a typo?
No, it's 2023. That's what they asked for.
Oh, that's weird.
I
that
think
something we can-
2023 is still this year. Fiscal year, fiscal year,
Right.
correct.
Yeah, it's fiscal year.
All right. And so, and my other concern is, what does it mean by any and all documents? What are we talking about? What are those documents?
We don't know.
Could be anything.
But like,
Anything. Audits, disclosures.
Yeah, we've
Didn't
done,
we have this situation when we put those trailers by the Faith Church?
Yes.
I thought we had a similar situation where it was blanket and open-ended,
Very
and there were no standards developed yet.
Correct.
My recollection. Remember
That
that?
was the case, absolutely.
That was sort of an emergency deal. I don't know if this
but you're
was-
still impotent to
we're
do
only
it.
going by the template they give us.
Right.
It's,
But I think what paragraph 2 is saying, that we're allowing the mayor to use his judgment, whatever they ask for, if he feels that it is appropriate, he'll give it to him. If he doesn't, then he doesn't, we don't get the money.
Yeah, I can speak to that.
Randy?
What's going to happen in this, in reality, is that the mayor's going to be reactive on this. He's going to respond to what they ask for. He's not going to decide, you know what, I'm going to take this and I'm going to give it to them. That's not how these work. I understand the language of this is broad, and it's unacceptable if I was to draft this from scratch for another reason. But I can't amend it I'm not going to mess with it. That's my opinion. We've done this before. Matter of fact, I think you were on the town council.
I was, I remember.
It was awful.
But Randy, we also, when our last relation with the Homeland Security, which was back COVID time, we had to put together.
It was mandatory.
169, right, 169 towns had to do it. So,
Presumably, and I'm being presumptuous here, presumably that's what came down from Homeland Security.
yeah.
But I don't assume that because I haven't seen it. I haven't seen their information. I am loath to fool around with it, though. I've been doing this for a long, long time.
Yes, we don't want
And I don't want to
admonishment.
create a bureaucratic morass.
Right. So? Okay,
Something we can look at next year.
so, right, okay, so we have
I
a
wish it was
motion
different.
and a second.
Wait, we've done this before?
Uh-huh.
So you've sent documents before?
Only
Have
with-
you had to respond before to this?
I believe we get this every year, and I believe we do this every year.
Right, so my question is, have you sent documents?
Absolutely.
Okay, well, I guess part of this is, we don't hear about it. So how much money have we gotten? Are we getting money?
I believe it's about $8,000 or $9,000.
Okay.
Yes,
but-
minimal stuff.
Here's the budget.
The following resolution must be passed by us every year. Any council that gets it. Has to be done in every year. It states right there. So,
I remember this at least 12 of the last 15 years I've been sitting here.
exactly,
At least the last 12.
exactly.
This went through Pat, it went through Dave.
Everybody.
It's gone through you.
That's right.
The same
The
verbiage.
same verbiage.
Actually, you're right, because during Mayor Murphy's administration, she's the one who said she didn't want to sign it.
Right.
Oh, yeah.
Right. And that's when I
Right.
created a mess.
And not signing it would,
We didn't get the money.
You're right.
Well, yes.
You won't get the money.
that's right. Okay.
so what are we using the money for? Exactly.
The money goes for your emergency operation command director,
Yeah.
the assistant. It goes towards them. Some of the
Emergency
purchase
response.
of some of the materials, like the paper that they need and stuff for that department.
Yeah.
So that offsets that cost. Right.
Yep.
Right.
That's right.
Yep.
Get it? Now it's coming
Yes.
back? Yeah, right. Okay, so.
So we have a motion and a
second.
second. Any further discussion? All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Any abstentions?
Do you want to
Thank
read
you.
this into the record or just have Stephanie write it into the record?
I'd ask Randy.
Randy, do I need to read it into the record?
You can write it into the record, as long as it's on, and they get a
It's
copy
a-
of the minutes, that's fine.
Exactly. Got it? Great.
The last item on our agenda has a meeting tonight.
Nice.
That's great, we're done.
Right.
The next meeting is
Clerical people were
is
not
April-
available,
April 8th.
so it was slightly typoed. And
April 8th, for those that are watching.
April 8th at 7 PM in the E. Paul Martin Room. Thank you.
Okay, do we have a second? All those in favor? All those in favor?
So moved. So moved.
Thank you, everybody.
Take care, good night.
Thank you.
Bye.
Thank